Hello, my name's Elijah Wells, and today's review is Phil Lord and Christopher Miller's new movie, Project Hail Mary. The movie follows a science teacher at a middle school, who's played by Ryan Gosling, who wakes up in a spaceship light years away from home and had no memory of how he got here and what he was doing there in the first place. But when he recovers his memory, he realizes that he's on a mission to save humanity from extinction after it turns out there's a substance that's dimming the sun to the point it's becoming too dangerous for humanity to survive. But while he was doing this mission, he has a little visitor, being a little rock alien that he calls Rocky because he's made of rocks, and of course his son in his own world is dying, and they both have to rely on each other with their own communication devices and their own self-knowledge to basically save both their worlds from extinction. This has been Phil Lord's and Christopher Miller's first directorial effort in 12 years. Back in 2014 they did release 22 Jump Street, and as well as the phenomenally successful movie, The Lego Movie. Of course, during the late 2000s and early 2010s, they were pretty much the king of the comedy genre around that point, particularly with films like Cloudy with Chance of Meatballs, The Lego Movie, and the Jump Street films. But after they were done directing these films, they moved on to producing not just the sequels to their respective franchises like Cloudy with Chance of Meatballs and Lego Movie. They were pretty much more unanimously known for their producing role in the Spider-Verse films, being two films so far, being 2028 and 2023. And of course, both have rapturous acclaims, and one of them even won an Oscar, and both have been considered one of the best animated films ever made. And of course, them returning back to the director's chair was not at all an easy task, particularly back at when Solo was still in production. They were fired by Disney due to a lot of creative difficulties and differences, and of course a huge power struggle that marred the production of the film, and were subsequently replaced by Ron Howard, and the movie ended up being one of the more underwhelming of the Star Wars films, particularly given the back then a really well-known toxic fandom that surrounded Star Wars, and of course Disney's alleged treatment of the property. Not just directors have some very interesting history, but of course Andy Weir, being that of the adaptation of his novel of the same name. Back at 2015, his adaptation of The Martian did make a lot of waves in the sci-fi community, particularly so in a year of like Mad Max Fury Road. The Martian was particularly a huge hit in the box office, as well critics seemed to like it, being one of the better films that really got released during that decade, let alone this century. And of course, being the second adaptation of his works, of course, the expectation was already through the roof with this one. Not just with Ryan Gosling, who's pretty much going on a really big hot streak at the moment, not just with his successful roles in Barbie, Fall Guy, but as well as Sandra Holler, who had a memorably huge 2023 with films like Autonomy of a Fall and Zone of Interest. Of course, being the two recognisable leads in the movie. What I definitely do like about the movie storyline is that you definitely do see the story like gradually develop. Like the first you see of Grace being portrayed by Ryan Gosling is that he has no memory of how he got to the ship and who he is. So pretty much the first chunk of the movie is pretty much him figuring out who he is and how he got here, and of course what his mission is. And the movie does it in a very gradual pace that doesn't come off as too sluggish nor come off as too speedy. But it comes in a pace where it isn't rushing or dragging. Then, once he sorted that priority out, then comes along Rocky, an alien who is rock-based and also done practically, as in he's a puppet in real life, which again, a really great achievement in visual effects. The movie's development of that relationship starts with them being scared of each other. Then it's kind of like a rival, essentially, where the first thing they do is pretty much put where communication is, like translation, which is essentially in the movie Rival, where the first rule in communication is first maybe do some translation of the alien language, then of course go from there, which is again a very interesting way of going through it, particularly how it's done in Arrival, which is a much more downbeat film compared to this one. The cinematography in this movie is absolutely gorgeous. Like, it's very beautiful. Particularly, it's done by none other than the legend Greg Fraser, who has made some incredibly beautifully shot big budget films like the Dune films, Rogue One, Creator, and Batman, and even in this more lower budget stuff like Foxcatcher, Lion, Zero Dark 30, even Vice has some moments where it's pretty well shot. Again, his cinematography is just incredibly beautiful and very scenic and very just very colourful and just really gorgeous. And again, knowing he does quite a lot of his stuff on digital and how he really utilises colour, and the movie in a technique that he apparently revolutionises, the idea that he shoot it digitally, then enhance the colours, then present it on film, then send it back to digital to give it that somewhat that really better quality that film is known for. And also, the movie's visuals are absolutely amazing, particularly the practical touch, like the sets were largely practical, the zero gravity looks very convincing, and of course, like I said, Rocky is pretty much done in post-production as even an animatronic and as well as a puppet as well, which is again a really cool touch they put into that effort, which is again really cool. The music being done by Daniel Plumerton, who's done the other Phil Lord and Christopher Miller's project being the Spider-Verse. It's very otherworldly and very out of body. A lot of choirs and a lot of like strings involved, and it's just definitely a very beautiful score to say the least. Like very just dreamy as well. Like I can imagine like this could be like played in an arena or something similar to like Hans Zimmer, where the score is like so cinematic and so almost arena-like, which is again the qualities that are definitely welcomed in the scoring community, particularly something like John Williams as well. Like the music is just incredible and just very out-body as well. Knowing this is a Christopher Miller and a Phil Lord project, expect some humour, and of course the humour definitely does deliver. The notable highlights, in my opinion, is Grace joking about the "Whoop There Is" song in front of like world generals, and when they were discussing about the Project Hail Mary, and of course when Rocky says, "You're the best human I know because you're the only human I know," and of course there's quite a lot of scenes where they do joke about, proud about, and particularly when Grace by Ryan Gosling pretty much learns the partner's name of Rocky, and it's just this really long sound effect, and he ends it like, "Okay, I get it. Yes, I totally get it." Again, a pretty humorous film with definitely quite a lot of heart to it as well. Like the humor is definitely whimsical without being something like the 21 Jump Street films, where it does get quite vulgar and quite edgy, and this is pretty much a lot more heartfelt with its humour, which is again pretty surprising to say the least. What this movie and the other Andy Weir adaptation, The Martian, really gets is that how it does its exposition is it doesn't do it in a way that was so overbearing or does it in a way where it doesn't overcomplicate it. So it definitely does put the needle through the thread, as in not doing it to a point it becomes completely exposition-y, or does it in a way where it doesn't get too complicated, let alone even like spoon feeds the audience. It pretty much lets the audience learn with the characters at their own pace or in a gradual pace, like in the movie. And it doesn't feel like it was too complicated with its exposition and its explanation of the sciencey stuff. It isn't like Stranger Things, where they constantly use diagrams or like props as like motifs or like what to do next. It pretty much lets the audience figure it out pretty much on its own logic, which is again something I do applaud, which is let the audience think about it rather than just spoon feed it. This is definitely a return to form for a directing duo who had not directed anything for over a decade. The visual effects are absolutely amazing with its practicality, and of course the music is very unworldly. The cinematography is definitely very beautiful, and the performance of Sandra Holler is definitely really brilliant in this movie, and the chemistry that Ryan Gosling and Rocky have in this movie is absolutely brilliant in this movie, and of course both of them do give out some incredible performances, even if Rocky essentially is a animatronic or a puppet in this movie, and the movie being done with no green screen and with a lot of practical effects with like zero G, like sets and how these sets feels. You pretty much sense the danger a lot more when the film is done practically, and of course the movie has a lot of heart and has a lot of humour, like the duo's other films like Lego Movie, Cloudy Towns and Meatballs, and the Jump Street films. And this is definitely, if not probably the strongest film they have done, in my opinion, with their directorial stuff. It could even rival stuff, if you include their production, if their stuff as a producers, like the Spider-Verse films. So, for Project Hail Mary, I am feeling a 9 out of 10 on this one. So, what do you think of Project Hail Mary? Let me know in the comments down below. Like this video, subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, Threads, and Dislike Rolls. And bye.